Okay, so we're talking dreadlocks today. The first thing I'm doing is I'm basically setting up what I like to call a dreadlock station. And so what I've got here is I've got basically one of my head stands that I usually put the foam head on top of it. And I've just basically secured it with some screws into my workbench so that I can set up a bundle of hair on this and then be able to do a bunch of backcombing on it. So this is basically what I need. Is you don't necessarily need to have like a stand like this to be able to do this. You just need some kind of a secure dowel. I've used a piece of rebar in the past to do my other dreadlocks for my old Tarfful. In this case, this was just what I had nearby that I could wrap this around. So in the next video, I'll explain how I'm getting the hair tied onto that, and then I'll start getting into the techniques of making the dreadlock. All right, so again, like I do in every video, I just want to say this is how I do this. It's by no means, nor are any of the videos I'm making, meant to be explained as though they are the only way and that they are the right way. I just like all the times I try to remember to tell people this is how I did it. I know I guess I'm old enough and wise enough to know that there are other ways to do stuff, and so if I do have any wisdom, that's probably where it gets derived. So anyway, in the last video I talked about I'm just using my foam basically headstand because it had a dowel coming up and I needed a secure spot to loop this hair around. Some of the other stuff I'm going to be using here, not very many tools for making a dreadlock. I got a couple of wrenches and a big giant zip tie. I don't know that you need a big giant one. I just like it because it gets the hair more secure. And as I'm saying that, you're like, what's he going to use that for? But I will explain that here shortly. So I've got my bundle of hair that I was working on in my blending and hackling video. This is the exact same one. And basically, I'm just going to wrap the tail around the end of this dowel. And I have about, I don't know, probably should put I'll put a measuring stick on how much I have left over, or how much of a tail I have here on this short end. And then I'm going to take my zip tie, I'm going to weave it underneath and up around there. It's going to be what's holding my hair securely onto this dowel. So it's not super tight yet. I can still kind of maneuver that hair in and out, but I've just tightened it down enough. And of course I missed some hair. You can see down there at the bottom maybe. I didn't capture a very small amount of hair, so I'm gonna end up having to probably just pull that out, which is, you know, I don't like wasting hair, but that's not gonna be a problem. That just happened because I didn't go completely underneath the hair with the zip tie, and there's no backing out the zip tie. So anyway, so I've got a fairly good length of hair hanging down here. It'll get much shorter as I backcomb this to make the dreadlock, but I'm gonna stick with it like it is now. That maybe is a little bit more tail than I would want, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tighten this down and really try to get that zip tie as tight as I possibly can around this dowel, because I'm going to be pulling on this hair. And so I want that hair to be extremely tight, and that's why I brought the wrenches in. So I've got it tight enough now to let go of it, but I've always just found it easier to try and tighten this down as much as I can with these pliers or wrenches. And I mean, even if I can just get a couple more clicks out of it to just really tighten it down, that's how I used to like to secure it. Now, I'm not getting any more clicks out of this, so it's probably good to go. But you want to get that zip tie as tight as possible on that there, so it can really hold that without hair coming off of there or coming through it. I'm going to get the measuring thing so I can kind of show you how much I have here and then how much I have otherwise. Now, this was a 48-inch length of hair. It was 2 full packs. I've got about an 8 to 9-inch tail coming off of that. In reality, I think I'd like it to be more like 6, so I should have shortened it a little bit. These weren't completely even, so if I was measuring about to here, it's probably closer to like 7. So I'm within reason. Some dreads are going to come out better than others. I like to make all the dreads before I start gluing any on, and then I'll basically pick the ones that I like the best, and I'll use those ones as the most visible dreads. The ones that I like the least, I'll try to hide them where I can, just so they're a little bit less visible. I guess ideally you have a bunch of awesome looking dreads and it doesn't matter, but that's not how it worked for me when I made this Tarfful costume the first time. So anyway, this is my setup here. This is what I'm going to be working with. I'm going to move the camera back so you can get a better look at what I'm doing, but this is how I secure my hair for making a dreadlock. This is a lot of hair to turn into a dreadlock. All the videos I've found on YouTube, they are dealing with much smaller amounts of hair, and the dreadlock can be made much more quickly. These big giant thick dreadlocks, they are much more hair, because when all is said and done, I'm trying to get an inch, a dreadlock that can be measured at about an inch wide. And right now, if I turn this around, it's about an inch. So I'm pretty sure that that's what I'm going to result with. I mentioned in my other video that I might, this might be too much hair, because last time I did this, I was working with hair that the volume had been taken out of the hair. So the volume is still in this hair. So this dreadlock may or may not be bigger than I want it to be. So this is a little bit of a testing ground for me, but I'm sure that you'll be able to see the technique and how I made the dreadlock, at least from this video, whether I end up using this particular dreadlock or not. So yeah, now let's talk about brushes. So I'm going to be using 2 different kinds of brushes. I'm going to be using, and I may even bring in a third one if I can find something, but I'm going to be using a detangling brush, and I'm going to be using probably a bunch of these. These are cheap little things. I think I bought like 50 of them in a pack off Amazon or something, and I have a ton of them. I can't remember what they're called, but I'm going to be using a bunch of these, and they're going to break. Several of them are going to break. The little teeth are going to start breaking off of them. They're going to get used and abused while making the dreadlock. The detangling brush, much lesser so. This will be fine for all of them. They're pretty durable and flexible and stuff. These teeth are pretty rigid, and they have a tendency with, when you're brushing really hard, and in this case I'm going to be back brushing, they just are brittle and they break, and they're cheap, but they're very inexpensive, and they sell them by many bulk. So anyway, that's what I'm gonna be using here, and then later on I'll talk about how I lock these into place, but I basically have a steamer that you would use for like ironing, steaming clothing, and I'm going to use that to basically, after I get this all tangled up, but I'll go over that part later. But I will be using a steamer. You don't have to use a steamer. You can use a wet towel, and really any kind of heat, but you just want to couple it with a wet towel. But again, I'm going to talk about that stuff later, how to lock it into place. I like using the steamer because for me it's just less steps, I feel like. So yeah, there's a start to the dreadlock video. I got try to have about 6 inch tail. I'll say 5 to 7 inch tail. Try to really lock it down hard with the zip tie, and you just got to set up a station to be able to do that. And so that's basically it. It's a pretty easy setup. The challenging part is that all the backcombing, because it's going to take me a while to backcomb all this hair in such a fashion that it's tangled up enough to where it will actually look like a dreadlock. So yeah. Okay, so backcombing. So I'm going to be holding the hair like this. I may grab it on the other side, but I'm going to be pulling my hair away from where I have it secured against the table. And they use the term backcombing. They use the term backcombing because that's just what it is. You're combing back away from where you would normally brush. You know, normally we're trying to straighten out hair and detangle it, hence the term detangling brush. But when you're backcombing, you're combing back the other direction. So when you backcomb, you want to start, you know, near the base of this thing where it's secured, and you want to just start brushing back. And I'm holding somewhat firm to this because I want my backcombing process to be dragging that hair this direction ever so slightly. I don't want to drag it in big chunks. I just kind of want to drag it strand at a time, trying to basically create a tangled ball mess in there, up towards the base of this where I want the base of this dreadlock to be. And it just requires a lot of, and then what I do is I'm just backcombing, and if I hold this too firm, it actually like it just brushes it because the hair, I'm holding it too firm, so it doesn't allow that hair to drag up and tangle itself in there. And then I'm also turning as I do it because I want to get the entire dread. This process, I consider this a very difficult thing. This is one of the least like enjoyable things I've done in terms of Wookiee costuming and stuff. It just requires so much tangling. And I think part of it is like, I like things to be straight and uniform, and then this is like the opposite of that, the dreadlock. I spent all that time getting all the tangles out of this thing, blending it together, getting it all nice and pretty, and now I'm, you know, so I'm just kind of working this thing. There's going to be hair everywhere. When I'm done with this, it's going to be a ball. It's not even going to look like a braid of hair. It's going to be a big giant ball of hair, and then we're going to take it and shape it. We're going to twist it and shape it. I usually get pretty sweaty when I'm making dreadlocks. It turns into quite a upper body workout, and I'm trying to just go a little bit at a time because I don't want to skip and tangle up a lower portion of this, because what it does is it locks the section above it in place. So I'm really starting up at this base. And like a lot of things Wookiee building, it seems like getting it started is like the hard part. So it's always a challenge. I'm gonna see if I can move that camera in closer so you can kind of see what's happening here though. Okay, let's try this again. I got the camera set up hopefully in a better spot. I did cut off, I just used a knife to cut off the tail there on that zip tie. If you ever feel like you're doing this and you didn't get the zip tie tight enough, then go back and tighten it down. There's still this little bit of hair down here that I didn't quite get in this. I'm just gonna kind of roll with it. At some point it'll probably just pull out or something, or it might get just blended in with everything. We'll see. You definitely didn't get it tight enough if you're pulling this and you're feeling that this is sliding through, this tail is sliding through, so you don't want that. But anyway, I'm just going to resume the backcombing process. So just trying to get the base of this thing started. I can feel small amounts of hair kind of pulling through my hands. I'm not holding it so firm that it can't slide through my hands. I don't want to pull big chunks, like I don't want to like do that, you know. So I'm going to be re-grasping it pretty frequently. These particular brushes I'm using are super brittle. I have a feeling I'm going to be going through a lot of them. Got to do 10 of these. I don't know what the timer is on this, but I'm guessing that one dreadlock is going to take me like probably a couple hours. I usually try to do like one a day. Sometimes it turns into one every other day. It's a little bit difficult for me to get motivated to do these dreadlocks, but I got to just remember the end. The end result's pretty amazing. It's spectacular. so I just got to kind of stick to it and just get it done. So I'm kind of getting started here. I don't know if you can see that on the video, but it's kind of getting there. At least getting a start. I got about a 1-inch area there. And I'm just trying to make sure there's not like sections that are straight. I'll go ahead and give the detangling brush a try here and see what happens. Now it covers a larger space, larger surface area, so it's going to want to grab more hair. I really like the detangling brush though. It really seems to mess it up, so I really use it in combination with everything else. And then I also will come underneath like this and do it. I need to go back with another brush and do that technique, because getting to that underside of it, you don't want to forget about that, because you want this thing to be tangled up all the way around. Sometimes I'll angle the brush in like this and then just kind of try to drag it up there and just basically bunching up all these tangles. I mean, that's really what you're trying to do, is you're trying to get this hair as tangled up as you possibly can. Seems like a nightmare if it was on anyone's head, but some people like dreadlocks, I guess. I don't know. They look cool. I think I've had my preferred hairdo over the last like 25 years of my life has been to have basically a shaved, buzzed head. For somebody that prefers no hair on their head, or virtually no hair on their head, I sure picked an interesting hobby in Wookiee making. Anyways, I'm just working through this. I don't know, hopefully you can see that tangled mess is sort of working its way down a little bit more, a little bit further as I go. Once I get about 6 inches of it started, what I like to do is I like to start separating it, so that I'm not working with as much of a huge bundle of hair. It's so much easier to tangle small sections at a time. But it all kind of hinges on getting a tangled ball here at the base of this dreadlock. I'm not really feeling any hair pulling through my zip tie, so that's good. I literally will just rake on this thing, like at some point. I'll literally just start raking on it, trying to dig into it. Of course, I've got this secured to my table, and my table's on wheels, so they have locks on them, but still you're probably hearing a bunch of shaking in the background. It kind of sounds like rain hitting the roof or something. This is a very tedious process, much more tedious than latch hooking even. The good news is you don't have to do as much of it as you do the latch hooking. So I feel like I've got a pretty good tangled ball there to start up top, or up towards the base. Just gonna kind of pull that tail out of the way. This is that stuff that was on the tail that I didn't quite get into the zip tied lock. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to section off a couple of, maybe 4 or 5 sections of this. And then I'm going to start working those because this thing is so thick, it's so big that, like I said earlier, it's really tough to get it tangled when it's just all one big giant braid of hair. So I got 5 sections there. Some are bigger than others, but I'm gonna go in here and see if I can start tangling one. I'm gonna lose a lot of hair in this. It just seems like that's the way it happens. So right now I'm gonna work on this little part right here. Let's see what we get. I'm just kind of working my way down, trying to pull it through my hand. I don't want it slipping through my hand. I want it pulling. Hopefully that makes sense. I would definitely encourage you to get on YouTube. In addition, don't just watch this video and think that you're going to be the master of this, please. Get on YouTube and watch somebody else, a couple other people, make a dreadlock. There are different techniques for doing it, and you get different looks with it. There's one where you're looping the hair through and doing all kinds of stuff, and I didn't like that style because I didn't think it looked like Tarfful's dreadlocks. But I did try a couple of those when I first started, and it you know, wasted a couple dreadlocks, but that was part of my learning curve. So I'm just going down now about, I don't know, maybe a foot of this, getting it tangled up. You can see, hopefully you can see, I better give you hopefully you can see that it's, you know, starting to get tangled up and dread up there. You can see the head of the brush, what's happening to that. It's definitely getting jacked up a bit. So I did about a foot of that one, and it's doing pretty good. I'm gonna set it off to the side, start working on another section of this. This was 2, and I just kind of grabbed it as 1, but actually it's a little thicker than I want it to be. So anyway, same thing. I'm just kind of going through this thing. I got little prongs on this brush flying off. Cheap little brushes. I think ideally you buy like a really good metal one. I just don't really want to spend the money on a metal brush because I don't know, these will probably be the last dreads I ever make, I think. Making this video so you guys can make your own dreads because they're a pain. Making dreadlocks is not a good way to do your Star Warsing. Somebody's gonna come out and they're gonna say, "Oh, you're just a whiner." They're gonna be like, "You're just whining." I love making those things, and then I'm gonna be like, "Okay, can you make me some?" Going back to the detangle brush. Sometimes I think I have a habit of holding the hair too firmly, and so I don't get the tangle as quickly as I want. So really just play around with like loosening up your grip on the hair. I'm hopeful that this whole process will make a lot more sense once I've completed it, so you can see like a finished dreadlock. Again, I'm not putting any pressure on the hair going this way, going that way. I'm putting all the pressure on the hair going that way, hence the term back comb. So again, I'm gonna stop the video here and then resume as I've made more progress. But I have now sectioned this into 5 sections, and I'm just working on those individual sections. I will later on go and blend all of those together with backcombing, but in order to get the inside of that dreadlock all dreaded up, if you will, I have got to separate it and do it in sections. So I'm gonna go and stop the video and then make some more progress, and then I'll come back and hopefully address any concerns at that point. All right, so I started dreading up those 5 sections. I got them fairly good and meshed up, whatever. There's a couple that I need to kind of go back. One of the techniques or things I do, I don't know what I call it, everything I do a technique. One of the things I do is, like, if I see areas that can like reasonably be pulled apart, I will pull them apart and then try to re-dread them up, because if they can be pulled apart, then they're not tangled up enough. So I do a lot of, like, where I mean, it might look like I've made about 12 inches of progress there, but the reality is that some of this stuff, like, I can still pull apart those 5 sections that I have. There's a section right in here that I really need to go back and pull it out of here and retangle it up. So it's just this kind of game of dreading up the sections, and then I'll put them all together, and I'll try to blend them together by doing this. And I don't know how much they actually blend together, but they have an appearance of as though they're blending together. I've definitely been using the detangling brush more than the other brush. Right now I've just got the 5 sections together, and I'm just trying to see if I can kind of blend them together. And that big mess right there is what I'm wanting. I'm wanting my entire dreadlock to look like that. And then what I'm going to do at the end is I will basically just go up here and I will just start twisting and twisting and twisting until I get it to the desired thickness. And then what I'll do is I'll secure it in place like that, and then I'll put heat on it to lock it in place where it's at. So at least you get at least an idea there of what I'm shooting for. This particular one I think is going to look pretty good, but I don't even think I'm halfway done with it. So it's been a while since I've done this, and this is even more hair and with more volume than I had before. So I think there's good and bad in that. But if I want a good looking dreadlock, I'm not going to say good looking. If I want a dreadlock to look the way I want a dreadlock to look, because I don't know, maybe you don't have to do all this to get a good looking dreadlock, but it really comes down to preference. But I know to get what I want to do, I'm not even halfway done. So I'm going to go back to the time lapse, but you can see, at least kind of see a start of how this is coming together. Is get a big giant tangled ball of mess. I guess it's not a ball, it's more, I don't know what you would call this, but you can go over it and over it and over it, and it's honestly probably not enough. You probably need to go over it again, almost guaranteed. So this little section right here that flew off, like that, you got to pull that tight because you don't want a big loop coming out of your dreadlock. For some reason it keeps pulling that spot. So you just got to hold that spot a little bit tighter and try to tangle it up in there a little more. I think one thing I might have talked about earlier is coming underneath it like this. That really seems to allow for some progress. When you only get on one side of it, it really just dreads up one side. But I'll usually, I hit the top of it like this, maybe twist and get the sides. And I'm kind of just sliding my hand down the dreadlock as I go. And then I like to kind of go back, do the same thing over the same area until it starts just looking real ratty. Because because you're essentially just pulling that hair up from the bottom so that it gets locked and tangled in there. But the way that that's looking right there, that big mess right there, I want to try and get this entire thing looking like that. So I think that kind of covers it to this point. I'm going to go back to the time-lapse video, and then I'll come back and talk about anything else that I need to talk about. I'm getting reminded of, you know, little things as I do this because it's been a while, so hopefully you're getting something out of this video. All right, so I'm just kind of finishing up one here, at least finishing up the tangling portion of this. And I'm looking around it, it looks pretty good. It looks like a mess, but in this case, that's good. I don't know if you can see all the way out here. Let me see if I can change the camera a little bit. But I've just got this like little tail end here that I'm kind of working with. So I'm just really holding on to this end part and just scraping it down. So it's just pulling those last couple strands out of my hand. And at some point I'm going to just pull off what I have here at the bottom. And then that's what I got is that's the tangled mess of it right there. One thing I didn't mention that is sort of a really good thing is that when you get to that halfway point in the dread, it really seems like you can put all of those sections together and then just dread it all up as one unit. And it goes much faster from that point on. I don't think this one took me an hour. I think maybe I was working on it for about 45 minutes. And I want to just kind of talk about length here. You can always cut them shorter after you lock them in place, but if we're talking about a general length here, because it's tough to get an exact length, it's about 34 inches. You probably want to get anywhere between 32 and 36 inches or something like that. Maybe that's a little long. Ultimately, you want your Tarfful costume to fit to you and to be proportional. So you don't want, you know, dreads that look like they're too long or look like they're too short. But when I do it with this method, I end up with a dread that's anywhere between 32 and 36 inches. And so the next step in this is I'm just looking at this thing and I'm seeing if there's any parts that don't look all tangled up and all messed up. And if there are, I'm just going to grab the detangling brush wherever I put that. I'm going to go back. I might kind of twist it a little bit and then just go back into that section and just mess it up. You really can't do too much of this. I mean, it makes a really fantastic looking dreadlock. The more scraggly this thing looks, the more, I don't know, convincing or accurate it looks to me. But I'm just kind of going through, getting a couple little areas that and it's looking pretty good. The next step will be to get this thing locked in place. So I'm going to set up for that and talk you through that, but the hard part is over big time. All right, excuse me. So I have finished the ruffling of the dreadlock, if you will. I've got a couple areas in it that I think, I don't know, they're questionable and I can definitely separate, like right in here I can separate some of this, but I have a feeling that when I twist it all together, it's going to be fine. It's going to look like a tangled mess. So I'm going to go with it for the sake of the video, and then we'll just kind of learn from it if it's not good enough when all is said and done. It's really hard to make these like perfect throughout. I mean, you just work as hard as you can to try and get them all messed up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using my steamer. Is this steamer down here? It's already kind of up and running right now. You can probably see it's pumping out some steam. And I'm going to be using this as my heat source and my water source. That way I don't have to use a towel on it. And so I'm going to be using that, basically just filling that thing up with water down there and doing this. I don't know how much these cost, but I don't know, you know, there's other methods of doing this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be twisting this up and getting it about the size I want, and then I'm just going to put steam on it. I'll show you that process here next. All right, so I've got my dreadlock here. I'm just going to kind of separate that tail that's hanging out of there. It's actually pretty secure. I was worried about that not being secure enough. And just at the base here, I'm just turning this dreadlock around and kind of twisting. I'm just going to twist it, you know, to kind of like my desired. It's about an inch. I'll probably put, you know, put the ruler on it. I kind of know by eye here, but that's about an inch, give or take, right about an inch of size-wise in terms of the dimensions of that dreadlock. And if for some reason I don't like it, like I had this little loop sticking out, so I just pulled the loop out, and I'm just gonna twist it around, kind of work it into that tangled mess of a dread. Now, if I twist it too much, I can get this dreadlock to tighten down and be skinnier. But I don't want to do that. I want to keep it at about that inch. It will loosen up a little tiny bit after you've locked it into place and let it sit for a while. You're also going to have certain sections of this. They're going to be a little bit skinnier than other sections. So you kind of have to just make a judgment. But basically, I'm just kind of petting it into place and twisting it down. I want to err on the side of making it smaller than an inch as opposed to trying to get it right to an inch, because it will loosen up a little bit on me after I lock it with the heat and the steam. I'm just kind of working this thing down. You can kind of see it's pretty tight right now. If I were to let go of this, it's going to, you know, unravel, so to speak. So I'm just going to kind of hold it tight. And then what I'm going to be doing here is, once I get to the end of where my dreadlock's going to be, I'm going to go back to I'm going to grab with my other hand, I'm going to grab the steam. I'm going to start steaming it from the base of it all the way down to where I'm at now. You can hear the steamer in the background, I'm sure. Hopefully it's not messing up my audio on this, but so I'm going to basically hold it like this. You can see that whole thing there, and then I'm going to grab my steam. Got this thing on. Right now it's kind of between cycles, so I gotta kind of wait for it to start giving me steam again. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this thing right underneath where the steam or the steamer is pumping out the steam, and I'm just gonna kind of work my way down. Here comes some steam. And you can actually see the heat and steam. If you look close enough, you can actually see the hair sort of melts and relocks into its current position, and tension starts coming off of this. You can see the dreadlock actually shrink. I may lift it up just a little bit so that I'm on the dowel, just so I can get under it a little easier. I haven't had any problem with this thing getting so hot that it just melts it and cuts it in half. But I can literally see this thing just barely. I'm sure you can't see it on camera, but I can literally see this thing shrinking and locking it in place. And I'm feeling the tension down here on this other, on my hand that's holding the dreadlock. I'm feeling the tension loosen a little bit because, again, it's locking in place. So I'm going to do this bottom side, and then I'll probably come over and do the side like this. I'll come over and do this side over here. But I'll go a couple more rounds so you guys can kind of see how it works. I've tried those other methods with the towel and the regular iron and stuff, and it works. I just feel like this is a lot faster. And I think these are pretty common devices, but I'm not really sure. I've had this one for a long time, so I can't really remember how much it costs and where it was purchased. So I'm still holding this dreadlock in place. Kind of waiting for some more steam right now. There we go. And like I said, I doubt that you can see it shrinking and locking in place, but it is something that you can visibly notice as you're doing this. I'm really not going to know either until, like, I'm not going to know if this is a dreadlock that I really prefer until I get the other dreadlocks done. Having made about 20 of these now, this being the 21st dreadlock that I've made, maybe a couple more. I had a couple throwaways. I think it'll be fine. I don't know that it's going to be like one of the ones I like best, but it's always hard to tell. You don't really know until you kind of let it release. What I like to do is I'll pin this down as it is right now, and I'll let it sit until it fully cools down. I'll also put the dread beads on it before I fully release it. My steamer is not operating like it used to. Yeah, I'm not getting all the steam I used to get. Well, it's still gonna work, but you guys get the idea. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this one. I'm gonna finish up this. I'm gonna go over it thoroughly just to make sure that all the hair has gotten some heat and gotten locked in place. And then what I'll do is I'll show you how I pin it up and show you how I release it with some dread beads on it. Because the beads will also kind of keep it from loosening up too much. I'm literally like getting right up, just scraping the steamer right onto it. I want the hottest air that it can pump out to encompass this. This little part that's in my hand too, I'm going to end up just cutting off the little tail there, but I'll probably do that very last. I might need to just put more water in there. I don't know. There we go. Yeah, for some reason I'm getting shorter stints of steam. Well, anyway, you guys get the idea there with the steamer. I feel like it's pretty good and locked in position, but I'm gonna go over it a little bit more and then I'll come back with those other videos. All right, so I've got this thing steamed out and locked in position. I'm just gonna let it cool off. I am going to basically I've got a little clip right up above, right up here that I'll pan to, but I'm basically just gonna keep this on the dowel on the one end. And then I am going to, I'll show you this. It's just conveniently in the right spot. So it's kind of nice. It's just a little clip here, and I'm just gonna do that and leave it right there and let it sit for a while and cool off completely. And then what I'm gonna do is let me grab a dread bead so I can show you. And I haven't painted them yet. They're still just, they are still, let's see which one. The dread beads are still, they're not painted or anything, but basically I'm just gonna take the dread bead and 4 of them go on every dread. So what I'm gonna do is, when that thing's cooled off, I will take it off that top clip, still holding the tension on it, and then I'll slide the dread beads on, and then I will release it after that point. Now with the dread beads I did for Tarfful when I made him before, I glued in a little hair clip inside of there so that I could attach that hair clip to the dreadlock a little bit more, so that I could actually like clip it in there. That way they weren't sliding around. It wasn't a great system. I just CA glued the hair clips in the dread bead, and occasionally they would break off. So I'm kind of wanting to come up with a better system for that. But they will slide on the dread. So I think myself and the community of people now that are looking at building this and doing this stuff, I'm kind of excited to see what someone else might be able to come up with to make that a better system. Because it seems like with 40 dread beads, and then as you're wearing the costume, you're moving your head around, and these dread beads are kind of scraping along your back and the ammo boxes that are on your back and stuff, and occasionally like one of the dread beads will catch the ammo box, and so it puts a little bit of pressure on it. And then I had a couple of those that would, it always seemed to knock off the glued on hair clip that I had inside there. It was just, I believe it was just a bobby pin was what it was glued in there. I think that's what it's called, as I'm trying to pick hair off my glasses. But that's it. It's a really simple process for making the dreadlocks. It's just a little bit laborsome. A lot laborsome, really. Although I'd be honest, this particular one, if it turns out okay, and I think it will, took me I think like 45 minutes to do it, and so that was a little faster than what I had expected. I feel like, I don't know, time moves really slow when you're making dreadlocks because it's pretty tedious. It's got some similar aspects as latch hooking. But that is how I make a dreadlock. I'm gonna have another video at some point because I want to get this one out there. But I need to have another video at some point talking about locating the dreadlocks and attaching them to the Tarfful underskull. And so I probably will get to that in the next couple of days. I want it to be a part of one video, but I know there's people that are already working on the dreadlocks now, or wanting to work on the dreadlocks now, and so I want to put this video out here. I may smash those two videos together when all is said and done, so we'll see. But anyway, I think that is it. I think make sure you put questions, comments down below. For whatever reason, I felt like when I was doing this tutorial or this video, it was a little bit more difficult for me to explain what I was doing or whatever. So if there are things that I didn't cover that we need to clarify, then let's do that right away. But overall, I feel like it's a good, probably you get at the least, you get a quick glimpse of how I do this. Again, go on YouTube, find out how other people make dreadlocks. don't mark my words, but the Heartsock family, great people by the way, I'm pretty sure they do a different method where they use foam, like a foam core inside of like hair. And so, and Brad, he has a good looking Wookiee, and the dreadlocks seem good. So I'm kind of secretly hoping that they can chime in on this subject and maybe teach us how to do this. Teach me how to do maybe an easier way that I like. I really do like the end product of what I come up with here, and I tried a few other things to get to this, but you know, like everybody, I'm always up for an easier way. The other thing too, that I did spend quite a bit of time looking for other human beings that could make dreadlocks for me so that I could just buy them and have them custom made. I could not find anyone, and I'm sure there is someone in the world that could do this, but it would probably be expensive to make, you know, make 10 dreadlocks. But if there was somebody that could do it cheaply, or affordably I should say, then gosh, that would be a whole lot easier to make a Tarfful costume if you could just order the dreadlocks from a place. I know tons of places sell dreadlocks. I just was not able to find anything that was, you know, 1 inch thick and you know, 35 inches long or whatever. But boy, if you could find that, then that would solve a lot of heartache when it comes to making a Tarfful. We'd see a lot more Tarffuls out there, because making the dreadlock is, I want to say it's not fun, but I don't want to scare people away. It's not something that should scare you away. It's just something that you should sort of, you know, plan out your time, because if you spend, you know, 3 straight days making dreadlocks, you're probably going to hate dreadlocks with a passion. But if you make one a day for 10 days or whatever, then in all likelihood you'll probably be like, oh, you know, it wasn't too bad. Anyway, I kind of rambled on there, and this video is probably a whole lot longer than it really needs to be, but I feel like there's something to be gotten from it. So I hope it helps. I hope it gives you an idea. At the very least, I hope it kind of sparks you going out and figuring out how we can make this a better way to make a dreadlock. But all in all, this works. So if you go this route, it'll work good. I think it's the long route, and it's the sort of probably the old-fashioned way of making a dreadlock. But if there's shortcuts and you can get something that looks like this, then great. I will try to come back with just one more short video after this, showing like a, you know, after I've released it. It's actually cooled off quite a bit. I was saying earlier that I would let it cool off overnight, and that's just because I think it doesn't need to cool off overnight. It really doesn't. It's totally cooled off now. So I'll just pull it free, and then I'll call this video, be done with this video. So let's see here. So I'm just pulling it off, and you can see there. I guess I should. You can see I'm not putting any pressure on it at all, and it's locked in position. Like it's just hanging down here. And you know, it's loosened up a little bit. Now I pulled it pretty tight, so so it's loosening up to the dimension that I want. And I may even try to, like, you know, jostle it to loosen up even more, but you can see the dread bead sliding on it. So and also there's kind of a skinny space in here that I'm not crazy about. But that's why I needed those clips. The bobby, I think it's a bobby pin or something. I can't remember what they're called. But the hair clips glued in there is so that those things would stay, because some of them were sliding because they were because the dread was a little bit too wide or whatever. But I can always unravel this to make it a little bit more. If you look at reference photos, Tarfful's dreads they get pretty poofy because just from wear and tear they loosen up, you know, probably on the set. But as I'm sitting here doing this, I'm just kind of trying to sort of unravel it a little bit, and it's definitely filling out. That area that was super skinny had really locked into place, and it's kind of unlocking a little bit. And actually, this dread is looking pretty good. I'm actually pretty happy with it. So that's good. I like to create a dread that I actually like the look of when I'm making the tutorial. Don't you think that's fantastic? Anyway, that's it. That is the Tarfful Dreadlock. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully I didn't scare you away. If there is a scary process to making Tarfful, I think the dreadlocks are likely it. But if you can do this, if you can take, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes and blend the hair together like I did in the blending and hackling video, and then you can spend another 45 minutes backcombing, then, you know, and do that times 10, then you can make yourself 10 dreadlocks and make an awesome Tarfful mask. I will come back with another video talking about where do we put you know, how do we glue these on and where do we locate them on the mask. And then I think after that, it's just going to be all about finishing all the hair on the face of Tarfful. We're going to have a rad Tarfful mask when all is said and done. So I appreciate everybody tuning in, comments, questions down below, and happy Wookieeing. All right.